Hi everyone, welcome back to My Parenting Way. My name's Katie and today I'm going to talk to you about pumping breast milk when you're exclusively breastfeeding but you don't want to cause an oversupply of breast milk. So I know this is quite a niche topic, but I was in this exact position for both my children. I had this huge oversupply of milk, but I really wanted to pump to be able to get a good supply of breast milk in the fridge or the freezer for my husband or any other family member to be able to feed my children. But the problem is every time I pumped, I knew that it would cause an overload of breast milk, which would then disturb my milk supply, and it disturbed my baby feeding, and it caused all sorts of problems. So there's lots of information out there on how to include pumping to actually increase your milk supply, and this is really useful if you have a reduced milk supply. But if you're exclusively breastfeeding and you already have an oversupply of milk, the prospect of adding pumping to this can be quite daunting. So this video is going to be talking about how you can include pumping in exclusively breastfeeding but without causing that oversupply. So an oversupply of breast milk can have its own problems. It can cause your breast to become enlarged and engorged, which means that it's really difficult for the baby to latch properly. It can possibly cause mastitis because of blocked milk ducts, and finally, just to top it all off, your baby can get really colicky symptoms and really gassy symptoms from the oversupply of fore milk and the sugars in the milk. So ideally you want to establish any kind of pumping routine after 6 weeks of exclusively breastfeeding, and this is to make sure that you are regulating your milk supply whilst your baby is growing. Even then though, your baby will still go through growth spurts where they will be feeding more often, and therefore that will naturally affect your supply. So this is something to be wary of when you're combining it with pumping as well. So yes, pumping on top of exclusively breastfeeding will increase your milk supply, especially if you do it quite soon after breastfeeding your baby. Your breast milk works quite cleverly on a supply and demand situation. So if you start pumping as well as feeding your baby, your body will automatically start making more milk because it thinks it requires more. So then you'll notice your milk starting to increase. Obviously, if you've got an oversupply of milk already, this is something you want to avoid. So it's really difficult to try and combine pumping already if you're exclusively breastfeeding. So I personally had the Medela Swing Flex 2-phase breast pump, single breast pump. So I only had the one pump that I would go from breast to breast. And this could be used either by attaching it directly to the mains, or you could put some batteries in it and you'll be able to walk around and do other stuff whilst pumping. However, it did mean that you had to hold the pump to the breast, and so it meant that you were pretty sort of stuck and sat around with pumping, which is difficult when you've already got children and a little baby to look after on top of exclusively breastfeeding. However, this was a great little pump, and it was great for me for what I wanted it to do. Obviously, if you need a stronger pump, or if you need a double pump because you feed from both breasts, then you would probably benefit from having a double pump because it will take up less time rather than going from one boob to the other. So no, using a breast pump isn't as effective as breastfeeding because your body automatically produces oxytocin, the love hormone, when you're holding your baby, and also the sucking mechanism of the baby is naturally much stronger than a pump, which is a bit more robotic, and it's just not as strong. So obviously, to be able to get enough milk, you want to do things like making sure that you get a pump that works well for you, and also little things like if your baby is nearby and you can see your baby and hear your baby, that can produce the oxytocin that can then increase your milk supply. So I'm talking obviously a lot about increasing your milk supply and making sure you get the right milk supply. But what happens when you have an oversupply of milk and you want to have more milk stored up on top of you exclusively breastfeeding? So this is how I did it. Firstly, I only ever block fed my baby from one breast, and this is the best thing that worked for me. Because I had an oversupply of milk, I found that switching from one breast to another meant that my baby would constantly only ever get fore milk, or the watery fore milk, at the beginning, and never get to the hind milk because my body was just oversupplying. Therefore, by block feeding from one breast, it meant that that breast could be completely drained, and I helped find it regulated my breast milk supply a lot better than feeding from both breasts. So for me personally, I wanted to have a stock of supply of milk, and I only really wanted 1 bottle's worth of milk. And the reason why is because I wanted to make sure my baby was able to take the bottle without a fight. You know, as they got older, I wanted to be able to, for my baby to be able to take the bottle without any issues. So we started the bottle quite early on, even though I was exclusively breastfeeding, and I wanted my husband to be able to give that bottle to my babies. So what I ended up doing is I wanted to make a 1 bottle supply, but to make that 1 bottle supply would have meant that I would have had to have pumped on top of my normal breastfeeding routine, which would have then caused an oversupply of milk. So what I found the most useful thing to do is actually pump within 15 to 30 minutes from feeding from one particular breast, and I would only ever pump 1 ounce of milk from that same breast. I would then do this 4 or 5 times over a couple of days. 15 to 30 minutes after feeding from a breast, I would pump 1 ounce, and after that 4 or 5 sessions of pumping, I would combine the milk to make a 4 to 5 ounce bottle of breast milk. Once I had that 4 to 5 ounce bottle, my husband would then give that bottle to my baby when I was out of the room, and the baby would take the bottle, and I would then pump that session worth of breast milk afterwards. And this was to basically remove the milk from my breast that the baby would normally drink from, but because they drank from the bottle, obviously I need to pump that session. This will then create a 4 to 5 ounce bottle that will then be the start of another feed. And this is how we then combined this in our breastfeeding routine, is that I would exclusively breastfeed throughout the day. In the evening, my husband would then feed my son, in this case, the 4 to 5 ounce bottle, and then I would breast pump after to remove the milk from my breast that was making up for that feed. I hope that makes sense. If obviously you wanted to build up a bigger supply, you can then continue to do this same system. So once you've got that initial bottle and then you replace the feed, that's fine if you're only ever using 1 bottle's worth. But if you want a bigger stash, because say you wanted to go away for a few days, or you end up going back to work early or anything like that, you can then combine the same system to then create more milk. So for example, again, you then breast pump within 15 to 30 minutes after you're breastfeeding your baby. Just remove 1 ounce of breast milk from your breast and then store that 1 ounce. Once you've got several pouches of 1 ounce, you can combine them to make 1 bottle and then store it. Obviously, look out for signs that you are creating an oversupply of milk, such as over-engorgement, making sure that your baby can latch properly to remove as much milk from the breast as possible, and also any kind of lumps that develop in your breast that could be blocked milk ducts. And keep an eye out on these little signs to suggest that you might be creating an oversupply of milk. If this is the case, or if your baby's going through a bit of a growth spurt and you're just trying to regulate your breast milk again, it might be worth just laying off the pumping and then exclusively breastfeeding again until your milk supply regulates. And just obviously look at your baby, making sure that they don't have colicky symptoms or big explosive poos or gassiness. And these are all little signs that your baby might be taking on too much fore milk and therefore not getting to the hind milk. Listen to your body and see what your baby's needs are, and that way you can combine pumping safely and knowing that both you and your baby are happy. I hope you found this useful. Please, if you've got any questions or any comments you'd like to make, please leave them below. I'll also leave in my comments some charities and some advice forums that I have found really useful when I've got this huge oversupply of milk. Please hit the like button if you've enjoyed this video. Hit the subscribe button if you want all the updates on me and Aiden, and we'll see you next time.